G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a video on something that's been coming for a fair while. We get questions about it occasionally, but that's actually talking about what this rifle here is in front of us, which is the 22 Magnum. Now, for those that know the channel and know what we did some testing a while ago down the road of trying to build basically an ELR, a rimfire ELR package that's going to work pretty well in the way of a rifle. It's something in a rimfire that's going to be able to shoot 600 and even out to 1,000 in a fairly reasonably consistent form. What that went with is the 22, and there's folks doing monolithic bullets and things for a 22 rimfire in the long rifle. We've shot out to 1,000 yards with the long rifle. But in actually trying to get something that went there properly, I really thought, well, okay, let's go with the rimfire and go with a little bit more power, which is the 22 Magnum. And what that stumbled into is as much as there's some people who would say not the case, but really there is an inherent inaccuracy that I found in most 22 Magnums, or the WMR. So then I started to go through the process of see what I could do to get the other side of that. The core of my idea was to be putting just simply a better bullet into a 22 Magnum round and then make it shoot properly. That became a little problematic in a few forms. The first one was proper bullets, meaning an ELR bullet with a decent BC, needs more spin than most 22 Magnums are built with. 22 Magnums generally built with 1 in 14 or 1 in 16 twist, twist in the barrel, so it means they don't bring up the RPM to be able to run the heavier and better quality long range shooting bullets. So that was my first problem. The next problem I went into was actually when I just started to use a normal 1 in 14 twist rifle and try and make it shoot accurately, was, as I suspected, and many also have suspected, was the ammo wasn't as consistent as it should be. One of the tests I did back then was doing speed tests and found that I was seeing up to 250 feet per second in the way of an extreme spread, with groups that were struggling to get down below 1.5 inches at 100 yards. Various reasons for that, but one of them was that extreme spread. What I found in that point was just simply crimping that ammo and actually putting an extra crimp on the ammo. I brought that extreme spread back down to more like around 80 feet per second, and it also raised the speed. What it said to me before I went any further was maybe the rifling, maybe the way the barrels are set up and that sort of, maybe there's something in that. But really the plan to get to try and have something consistent at that 500, 600, 800 yard sort of stuff, for as silly as that might be for the practical purposes, for the ELR purposes, I was going to need a different barrel. So that's exactly what I went down that road of doing a different barrel, but then to try and make it all work properly. Now then the research down that road is that some of, and even the very good rimfires, the way the receiver is attached to the barrel is they're pressed together. Pressed, sometimes pressed and pinned, sometimes pressed and bolted, but not the ideal sort of setup. It works fine for the low pressures and there's really no issues. They are nice and accurate, everything works well, but to go and start modifying them and changing barrels, it becomes a little complicated. So in doing some research, I came across the fact of, well, this is a Lithgow LA101, and I bought this in the WMR, so it was ready 22 Magnum. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One is the tenon, or there's thread on the barrel, so it's a normal screw in, screw out barrel, just like a centerfire. So that was the first detail. The other detail, a lot of rimfires just use the bolt cam to actually, that's what retains the whole bolt. On Lithgow, you have back here 3 lugs. So it's at the other end of the bolt to what a normal centerfire is, but there's still 3 lugs. So it's centrally pushed into the back of the action in a very strong form. So listen, and no doubt there's others, there's the Voodoo and things and all their way of doing things, and I'm not trying to get overcomplicated. I was trying to do it very much on a budget, but I decided, okay, that for that reason the Lithgow was going to work for me. The other reason it was going to work for me is that the guys at Southern Cross Small Arms do a little chassis for them. So that's what I've got it sitting in. So that was the process of why I went down that road. Took a fair bit of time to get everything together with various delays and bits and pieces over this last year or so. But I spoke to the guys at Swan. They did me up a 1 in 8 twist I've gone at the moment for the projectiles I want to run. I think that's going to work pretty well. But in the 1 in 8 twist, and this is actually a 24-inch barrel we've got sitting in here, and this is one of my modified little muzzle brakes on the front of it. Muzzle brake clearly not needed, but I tend to find whether it's in the harmonics or in other bits and pieces, there's something in that. So that's what I've gone with. Doesn't need it, of course, could just be, and it might end up having nothing on the front of it, but that's what's sitting on here for the moment. Actually took one of my old 2 ports we don't do anymore and machined it down so it's small. There's very little gas, but that's what's on the front and that's the reason for it. The rest of it, this is, they have set up here with holes and things in the back now, so I could just put my bag rider on it. I actually use the MDT grip. I do like the MDT grips, they feel good, and I have a few of them here, so I put one of them on. Trigger, I adjusted, got it to where I wanted to. It's just over 1 pound, so that was nice and simple. Bolt knob, that's simply, very simple bit. There's actually a little M6 thread in there, and I just got a bolt knob of just a normal, I forgot what brand it is, a Taco one or no, I've forgotten which brand it is, but a simple bolt knob that I put a helicoil insert in there to reduce it down in size and then Loctite it on. So it's got looks like a proper rifle, feels like a proper rifle. I got a little, a 30 MOA rail on the top here, just found that online, and then I've got my, this is actually the NX8 that I had on the, and that also runs on a few rifles, but it's sitting on Sam's rifle in the 22-250. So that's plonked on here to do our first little bit of shooting. The only bit that I really modified on things is I cut a little slot in the front of the chassis to be able to feed my low component D in there to run my bipod on the front of it. So this is all, some would say overkill for the 22 Magnum. I'm trying to make it as accurate as I can. I'm trying to set it up into a little ELR rifle. And so I'm not going to go with any excuses of what I didn't do properly. That's why I've gone down this road, and that's what you're looking at. So that's where we're at. I've just got to shoot it. I've ran, well, actually, I've got a piece of cardboard that has every shot I've fired through it on it at the moment. Listen, wasn't the day for it. There's a moderate amount of wind, not too heavy, but reasonably gusty, and reasonable mirage. The last 5-shot group is this one here, which we're just on an inch or just under an inch, 100 yards. So it's okay, but listen, for the conditions of the day, then that was great. That was a good group. The speeds I saw, put that back down. The speeds, because I ran it across the chronograph, the speeds weren't awesome. Now what I was shooting, and I'll start to go through the ammo again now, I was shooting this stuff here, which is this ammo, which is the Hornady VMAX in the 30 grain ammo, which I've removed the bullets, taken the 30 grain bullet out, put a 40 grain projectile in, crimped it, done all those bits and pieces, what you're looking at there. And we went through the test previously. That's just the ammo. That's the crimped ammo, which certainly was the stuff that showed the extreme spread on the speed really start to settle down. Well, got down to around 80. This stuff here, we saw around 100, 110 in the extreme spread. Normally it's around the 20 to 30, but you certainly get a low one and you certainly get a high one. A lot better than the factory stuff, but still we saw that sort of stuff. And like I said, the extreme spread was the highest and the lowest was just over 100 feet per second. So listen, at 100 yards, that's not a big deal. To try and shoot ELR, that is a big deal. That's too much of a spread. Well, like I said, it's going to be an occasional one, but I'm not in the world of calling a flyer. A miss is a miss, short is short, and the shooter's as much to blame as the ammo. So I need to go better than that. The other feature of doing that sort of ammo is I've got a single feed. What I've done to do that is in this little magazine, come out of there we go. In this little magazine, I've actually modified the top here where I put a little rail in there, which is just a little sort of shoe. That's still got a bit of glue on it from where I have not finished that off properly. But that's the quick test I did yesterday to single feed. And that works. But what I would say is it's a real pain. you can't single feed. In a centerfire rifle, I do it very naturally. It really, if I'm shooting more than 5 rounds and then they could just run out of a bolt, then it's faster for me to just a single feed. I like it, it looks after the brass better, which I'm going to reload, all those features, so I single feed and like to do that. In a rimfire, I don't like to do that. It's awkward trying to get that bullet in and trying to make it sit. You really are wriggling around a lot. Sometimes they'll go straight in, sometimes you go to position them and reach around the rifle and do that sort of stuff. So if there's anything in keeping your platform and yourself all settled, single feeding a rimfire breaks that completely. So the next thing I'm going to go out and test. Well, I suppose I had to do a little bit of thinking about that spread, that extreme spread, that speed difference. Like I said, group was okay, but I know when I go back further, it's going to be a bit of a problem. So what I've got here on the other side here is what I actually started with when I just was shooting the 22 Magnum at 600 yards, and it was okay but not brilliant, was actually using this 50 grain Federal ammo, Game Shock Federal ammo. I'm going to go back to that. A couple of reasons, but what we've got is a little gang of what we're doing. Here's just that ammo. Here's that ammo which I'll do a crimp on it, see how much it settles it down. Here it is set up pretty much as liking here, so running here, so except for these are the 52 grain Burger projectile, which then are set up to where everything's nice and neat and tidy. They're set up where the bottom of the bullet is pushed into about the same place. So I've got about the same compression, or not compression, about the same powder space in there is all I've done there. Crimped and like that. The ones next to it are probably the ones ideally and really where I have to end up in whatever form. And that is where they're pushed in to where those, see if I can grab them carefully without knocking them over, will run in a magazine. So they run and they'll go load down the magazine. Those ones there will do that, made to be, no, that's not going to work, made to be magazine fed. So 10 round magazine, get a couple of those, then you really can shoot a rimfire where you can stay comfortable, you're loading, you are not reusing your brass, you're not concerned about your magazine, what it's doing to it, that sort of stuff. It's going to work really nicely there. And yeah, with the plinking style of that sort of stuff, to have 2 or 3 magazines, that's where we're probably going to end up. So that's where I want to get to. I want to get to, and yes, I probably could modify the magazine and work out how to run the longer ones in there and that sort of stuff. I'm trying to do something that other people can sort of do as well. So using a magazine length thing for a rimfire comes back to making sense. So that's the plan at the moment, at least. Now the other detail I'll go into there in the way of explaining what I'm up to, I actually then went through the process of where I thought I was going to have to start to, and I've taken a tangent from there, maybe I'll come back. And that is I was considering that I'd have to take the bullet out, take the powder out, even the powder up, and put it back in, and then go down that road. I was starting to see that it was coming to be okay until this last shoot, and maybe it is in the powder side of things. So maybe I've got to do the powder side of it. I now have one of the tricular with this measured down to 0.2 of a 0.02 of a grain, I think it is. So measure more accurately, and I could do that process, and that's probably what I've got to go to. When I pulled these bullets apart, I went back to the factory rounds and pulled them apart to see if there's a way I could do this. Could I just measure a bullet in its weight and then sort the bullets like that and then just reload there? Trying to not do the longest way of doing things, just measuring everything. But I pulled these to pieces and measured everything. So I measured the bullets, I measured the brass, I measured the powder, I measured I said bullets, I meant projectiles, I measured the whole round, and everything, absolutely everything was different. So when I got empty brass, well, empty except for it's got the primer paste down the bottom of it, the primer goo in the bottom down there, they measured up to, well, over 5% difference from one to another in the way of their extreme spread. So there were differences there. So maybe you empty them and you get them to be the same weight. But is that the primer that's different weight, or is it the brass that's different weight? So maybe you could machine that out. Okay, we're getting complicated, but the powder was up to 5% difference, which means that in some cases you're going to see over 5% differences in the whole combination. If you get all the heavies with all the heavies and all the lights with all the lights, then you're going to see those extreme differences, which is exactly what we saw. The crimping helped, but it's not the whole key. So I suppose the nutshell of that is what I'm saying is I'm going to keep pursuing down the road of trying to make it as good as I can, but within reason. Ideally, I want to be able to get a way to be able to not have to dissect the thing completely. Just a lot of work that goes, when you pull the trigger, it goes bang and it's all gone. So magazine feeding is important. If I can make them work reasonably well like that, I suppose the other little difference I'll tell you is the Hornady powder. It's obviously very good. It's their specific powder they use. It's sticky, it's clumpy, it sticks to the back of the bullet, it sticks inside the brass, it's hard to clean out, quite complicated. May go there because there's performance in it, I think, but the Federal stuff, completely the opposite. It all cleared out very easily, it didn't stick to anything, it didn't clump. There was less, there's about 5.5 grains of powder in the Federal versus but loaded for a 50 gram projectile, and just over like 7.3 loaded for the 30 gram projectile. But hey, powder isn't powder. There's all differences, all subtle bits and pieces, and more speed isn't necessarily better. At the moment, the step I've taken is simply unload, leave the powder alone, put the bullets in, put the projectiles in, get them down to magazine length, and we'll go out and test them. Yes, I'll have to do the powder thing and see if that does stuff, and we'll try and find the least path of resistance to end up with the best overall result within reason. One other bit I'm going to have to make, because as you can see, fiddling with these bullets is tricky. They want to fall over. So I'm going to make myself up a little loading tray, use some Perspex drill holes in it type thing, so you can set up a rack so they are stable. Getting powder in and out of them, we'll get back into them, makes sense. I'm not just doing it on the bench freestanding, that sort of stuff. So that's the other detail I've got to do to get there. But as said, this is just a little update for those people who are wondering. Yes, we're working at it. This is all our expense. So the people who want to help us and support us, keep that in mind. This is the sort of stuff that we're doing. Apart from the big stuff, there's also the little stuff. If it's worth something to you, then yeah, maybe it's worth something to you. So that's where we're at. Look forward to, well, when we can, we'll get out and do some more testing with it, but we have been on it. This is what we're up to. To me, it looks like a proper little rifle. The muzzle brake is probably a step too far. We'll see. I'll test off as well. Like I said previously, I've seen little advantages in that place, but that, I don't know. Aesthetically, it also makes it look like the real deal too, I suppose. Anyway, for all those 22 Magnum fans that theirs shoots wonderful half-inch groups at 200 yards, listen, awesome. I would say I think the round is super capable, but it is not delivered in that form. The only way the really good groups happen is a certain amount of luck. From all the testing I've done and all the pulling the brass to pieces I've done and measuring, they're simply not that consistent. It doesn't mean you can't get consistent out of, listen, a little bit of sorting and a little bit of luck, because from what I've seen, you're not going to measure them without pulling them to pieces. But who knows? There's good days and bad days, and I'm only testing my sample of things. But I suppose the last bit I'd say there is for the low recoil, and the potentials are certainly there. Refining it all, that's where the work has to be. And listen, hopefully we're on that path. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed, and yes, we'll get to this as we can. It's not going to be a fast process. We've got a lot on, but yeah, we're on it. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for checking in on us, and we'll catch you next time.